Om Sudhi Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavad Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Sthapakaya Dharmasya Sarvadharma Surubini Avatara Varisthaya Ramakrishna Te Namaha. So most probably we'll be concluding this classes series this morning. So before we conclude, just a recapitulation, just a summary of this Chatusutri section. It is only a small tiny fragment of the entire Brihadaranyaka Bhashya canon, 555 sutras, here only 4 sutras, and generally sutras are arranged together to form an adhikarana, and altogether there are 191 adhikaranas in 4 chapters, each having 4 padas. Now, the contents of Chatusutri. First, there is the sutra Adhado Brahma Jignasa. It should be kept in mind. It is Brahma Vichara. So, Brahma Vichara Kartavya. This is how the Tikagaras will conclude. Jignasa is Jnadum Ichha. But that's a technical term. So when we try to understand the words in a philosophical work, there are 2 ways of trying to understand. First, you try to understand the meaning of the words and the padarthas and then vakyarthas. But that is totally insufficient in philosophical classics. That's one way of understanding, a most elementary way of understanding, which may be very, very incomplete. To understand the actual implications of these words, you should reanalyze the entire text in the light of the philosophical concepts discussed there. Because terms and vakyas and padas have to be interpreted, padarthas and vakyarthas have to be interpreted, analyzed in the light of the overall philosophical content, the philosophical discussion. Otherwise, we won't understand the actual meaning. So, Brahma Vichara. Because there is no question of anyone trying to understand what Brahma is all about. You only discuss what Brahma is, but it is not something that we want to know about because it's our own true nature. So the second sutra is Janmadhyasya. So it contains both Tadastha Lakshanas and Surupa Lakshana. Yadova imani bhudani jayandi dhanjatani jivandi tad vijasu tad brahma tad vijijñāsasva tad brahma. So that is Tadastha Lakshana. Then Ananda ki eva imani bhudani jayandi, etc. That is Surupa Lakshana. Then in Shastra Pramanam, that is Shastra Yonitvad, Pramanam is discussed. Shastra Pramanam. Because it is not proper in any Vedantic text to discuss only Lakshanam and then leave out Pramanam. So Lakshanam is discussed in Janmadhyasya Yataha, and then Pramanam is discussed in Shastra Yonitvad. And then in the Samanya Adhikarana, after discussing different viewpoints of non-Advaitic philosophers like Prabhakara, Bhatta, and also Vrittigara. Vrittigara is an umbrella term. It could be Upavasa, it could be Bodhayana, it could also in a way reflect the views of the many other non-Advaitic pre-Shankarite Vedantis who also wrote, who have said to have written commentaries on Brahma Sutras, but many of these books are not available except in fragmentary forms from the Bhashyam, or in some respects from the condensation of their views even in Bhamadi Vajaspati, and more elaborately in the Brihadaranyaka Bhashyavartha Suresara. So, last section that we are going to discuss today is the concept of Jivan Mukti in Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. So we already discussed these 2 important points, Gauna or Mithya. So Gauna means you know the difference, still you give somebody a name or certain titles on the basis of certain characteristics. For example, Simho Manavaka. A young man is called a Simha. Everyone knows that the young man is not a Simha. He doesn't have the color or the animal picture, all the external forms of a Simha, a lion, this young man doesn't have. And his own father may call him Simha. Does his father think he is a lion living in the forest or zoo? He knows that they are not the same. But then certain characteristics are attributed to the young person. So we call him Gauna. Mithya means absolutely unreal. You mistake a sthanu for a purusha. Sthanu means, let's say, post. Purusha means human being. When you are seeing in a semi-darkness with this very little light, then you may mistake a post for a man. But you don't actually see the characteristics of a posted man, because you know very well, if you have seen really, that there are two different entities. But when you are seeing a human form in a post, at that time you sincerely believe it is a human being. That is an important point. You don't see the distinction at that time. That's the point. If you saw the distinction, it will become Gauna. So it is Mithya. Now Bhashyakara may insist that this Atmanaha Sarirabhimana is Mithya, not Gauna. Pratikaras and Bhartas will say, Prabhagaras and others will say, it is Gauna. Why? If it is Gauna, it is not entirely wrong. Because the young man has got the characteristics of a lion. And then he knows there are no two entities. But when you see a sthanu and mistake it for a human being, you don't at that time understand it is not a human being. You think it's a human being. You don't know it is sthanu. So there's a great difference. So that is why another thing is, in Gaunatvam there is always Satyatvam. There is an element of truth in Gauna. But in Mithya there is no truth. Because the Sthanu and Purusha have no real, when you understand it is Sthanu, Purusha is gone. Please understand. There is no more exist. When you understand your Atman, then Sarirabhimana is gone. So that these are two different things. So if you accept the views of Uttigara and Prabhagaras and Bhattas, then you have to admit that, well, there is some kind of relationship between Sharira and Atma. And then there is some kind of justification for Upasana and Kriya and Yaga Yajnas. Because if Atma and Sharira are interrelated, then Atma becomes Karta of Yajnas. Yesterday we discussed that. Atma becomes Karta, then all Yajnas and Yaga, they Kartrutva. Upasanas, all these have their results. Those results, Apurva, will purify the Karta, Yajamana. That is not acceptable to Vedantists. Now we will begin a little earlier to finish one entire Prakarana. So this is a conclusion of one Prakarana, mostly dealing with Jivan Mukti. This is a very important discussion. Based on the Sudhi Pramana from Britannia. So here Yadha Mandadhare Sthanvayam iti Agrihyamana Vishesha. Agrihyamana Vishesha. Purusha Shabda Pratayo Sthanu Vishayo. So the distinction between Sthanu and Purusha is not obvious. Is not able agrihya. It is not obvious to the person. Because human being have two hands, a head and many things. So shape is totally different from Sthanu, a post. But he is not able to understand that distinction at that time. But if his own father calls his own son as Simha, his father doesn't think his son is like a lion living in the forests. He doesn't know the shape of a lion. So even when he calls him Simha, he knows it is not Simha. It is Simhatva. Just because of some characteristics that this man may have with a Simha. So, but here, even external shape is mistaken. Because why? Agrhyamana Vishesha. Agrhyamana Visheshe Purusha Pratyayo. Purusha Shabda Pratyayo. Shabda means word, name, Pratyaya means Bodha. So because the person is not able to see the actual distinction. Yathava Suktigayam Akasmat Rajadam Idi Nishchido. Akasmat all of a sudden. Shabda Pratyayo. Tadva Dehadi Sankhadi Akamiti Nirupacharina means Mukhyataya. That's the meaning of Nirupacharina. Means not as Gauna. That's the important point. Yadha Shuktigaya Magasma Rajadamidi Nishchido Tadva Dehadi Sankhadi Akamiti Nirupacharina means Mukhyataya. Actually, because when you see mistake as Thanu and mistake for a Purusha, you sincerely believe at that time, till you bring light and find out it is Thanu, you think it is Purusha. So also, Shuktiga Rachadam, we already discussed earlier. Sabda Pratayo, Atma, Anatma, Avivekena, Utpadyamano, Katham, Gauno, Shakyo, Vadidum, then how can she see Gauna? Gaunatva can be possible only if the person at that time really understands the distinction. As a father calling his own son Simha, really understand that his son is not Simha. But in this case, when you mistake Sthanu for Purusha, you do not understand that it is not Purusha, it is Sthanu. You do think it is Purusha. That's a problem. That's the distinction. Now again, Atma, Anatma, Vivekinam, Avi Panditanam, Aja, Viparanam, Viva, Avivikto, Sabda Pratyayo Bhavati. So, Avi actually means sheep, Aja means normal goat. Sheep is more problem, used to be used for certain yakas and yagas. Both were used to be used. So, even those who are, just shepherds, the sense that they may not be familiar with the Shastras and all that. And also Atma Anama Vivekinam and Panditanam. Scholars who actually understand, who have got Paraksha Jnanam. And also common people, ignorant people. Iva Avivikto Sabda Pratyayo Bhavati, because they don't understand the difference. Tasmad Dehadi Vidrikta Astitavadinam Dehadu Ham Pratyeha Mithya Eva Nagaunaha. This is the Advaita's conclusion. Mithyatum, not Gaunatum. This is important. Because if it becomes Gauna, then Atma and Sharira will have some real connection. Gaunatum implies Satyatum. It is real, but it is Amukhya. It is only Gauna secondary. The man is like a lion, there is a bit of truth in that, but actually he is not a lion. So there is a justification to call a person a lion if he is a very brave person. But there's an element of truth in that, but at the same time, it is not entirely true. That's what's called Gauna. It's not Mukhya but Gauna. But at the same time, that's a Vrittigara Matam, Bhatta, Prabhagara Matam all say it is Gauna. Advaitin say it is Mithya, means absolutely unreal. Because once you bring light and find out it is Thanu, then the fact this is not Purusha becomes an absolute fact. There is no Purushattam at all in the Sthana. Now there is the celebrated verse which oftenly quoted. So whenever you see any contradictory arguments, you can see the Shastra Pramanam. Here, that is Api Vidushaha Asariratvam. Oh, here, before that, this one sentence I forgot. Tasmat Mithya Pratyaya Nimittatvad Sasarirattvasya Siddham Jivataha Api Vidushaha Asariratvam. Therefore, because of this Mithya Pratyaya Nimittam, means this Atmanaha Shariratvam Tasya Mithya Pratyaya Nimittatvad. So, the so-called connection between Atma and Sharira It is mithya. Because of that, you know what happens? Even when a person dies, his body is pushed the tube, is cremated, still he is sasarira. Why? Because he is to come back. His sukshma sharira, sukshma bhutas continue to exist, and accordingly, according to Punya Baba, he will be born in another family and he will continue his life. He will get another sthula sharira, but the sthula sharira becomes a vehicle for his sukshma sharira, which again you have to understand. When you use the sukshma sharira, you should remember it is puryastakam, it is subtle. What a human being actually is, minus his body, is sukshma sharira. You remember a great man, you don't remember him because of his body structure. Thousands of years you remember a Buddha. Not because Buddha, we did not know how Buddha looked like. But then Buddha represented something. And that is actually Sukshma Sarira. In the sense, all that he lived for, all that he identified with, the great ideas, his compassion, his spirituality, that's how we associate the name of Buddha. That's actually an aspect of Sukshma Sharira. So I mentioned earlier in the well-known Tadandara Pradivityanam Adhikaranam, Tadandara Pradivityanukaranam, the Adhikarana, the first sutra says, Tadandara Pradivatu Ramkadi Samparishuktaha Prasna Nirupnapyam. It is an analysis in the light of Panchakti Vidya. Asova Loga Gautamatni, like that. There is a whole Panchakti Vidya description there. So, Tadandar Privatu, Dehandar Privatu, Remkadi, Gachadi, Samparikshuktaha, Suksha Bhudehi, Alingidaha. Like that, this is how the Bhashya goes. So, how does a person migrate from one body to another body? Tadandar Privatu, Dehandar Privatu, when he attains another Deha, how does he go? Sukshabhudehi alingidaha adhava na alingidaha. Samparishuktaha adhava na samparishuktaha. Then the conclusion is, when a body migrates to another body, he is accompanied by his Sukshma Sharira. That's why people, when they are born, they display, they demonstrate certain unique characteristics, which we can't really explain in the light of genetics, family environments. In the same family, you can find brothers going to the same school, same parentage, same environment, but five totally different human beings. So you can all these, Dhruva was the son of the demon, that Hiranyakashipu. All these examples are there. Sorry, not Dhruva, Prahlada. Prahlada, the greatest of devotees, was the son of Hiranyakashipu. It's not genetics. Prahlada Sushma Sarira is coming from another life in which he was somebody else, not Hiranyakashipu's son. He was somebody else, Prahlada. So all these are examples there. Anyway, so that's why when a body migrates to another body, it migrates to another Sukshma Sharira by taking a new body, entirely new body and rebirth. That means Tasmat pratyay prathya mithya pratyay nimittatva sasariratva siddham jivadaha vidushaka shariratvam. So if a person who dies, physically he is asharira, but spiritually he is asharira, because even if he loses his physical body, he retains his sukshma sharira with which he is born again. In that case, a vidwan, a brahmajnani can live in this world with his sharira. So physically he is asharira, but spiritually he is asharira. That is even mukti. He may display many of the characteristics of his life, of his actions, of the samskaras and vasanas that he generated by living this world. And somebody who becomes Jivan Mukta, he may have to continue eating the same kind of food. He may have to wear the same kind of clothes. He may speak maybe the same language. All these are like momentum, it's called involuntary momentum, continuation of the momentum. It's called Badhida Anivritti of a Jnani. Anivritti, but Badhida. That is explained here. Tatha cha Brahmavid Vishaya Sutihi. So, Brahmavid, Brahmajnani, the Sudhi Pramanam, which explains Brahmavid, Brahmajnani is given here. Tadyatha ahi nirluyani vadvigi mrta pratyasta shaida eva evameva idam shariram seti atha ayam ashariru amrtaha pranaha brahmaiva teja eva. Famous verse. This is the so you can easily understand some of the remarks that we heard from different sources. You can analyze those remarks in the light of this Sudhi Pramana, which I referred to yesterday in conversation. So, Tadyatha ahi, a snake which is dead perhaps, nirloyin is anthill, lying in an anthill. Valmiki, it's anthill, is Valmiki. Nirloyin is the skin of the snake. Mrta is dead. It's lying on an anthill. Its skin is lying in an anthill. Mrta. Pratyastha, it has given up its skin. Saita, and it's lying there. Saida evameva idam shariram shede. Similarly, the body of a Jivan Mukta is not lying there. He may be walking, may be talking, he may be doing great things for the world, but he is asharira. In the sense, asharira means he has no sharira abhimana. Ashariratum actually means moksha or Jivan Mukta state or Shariratu Abhimana Rahityam is Ashariratu. Not absence of physical body. So Pratyastha Shaida Etameva Idam Shariram Sheti. I mean, so far as he is concerned, that body doesn't exist. But when we see him, he is moving everywhere, doing great things for the world. Even Shankaracharya, after Brahmajnanam only, he wrote all these books. Came back to Vyavaharya level, we find, writing all this. So all this, world around, starting the organization, the monastic organization that we belong to, all that did with this Ashariratva state. But his body was so active. All Sri Ramakrishna, all Vivekananda, all these great spiritual persons, can you imagine? So, atha ayam ashariraha amrdaga. So, on the one hand, there is no sarirabhimana. On the other hand, it is amrda, it is deathless, that the person has no amrta swarupa, deathless, of the nature of deathlessness. So, then prana is alive. Sri Ramakrishna was alive after Brahmajnanam. When he was teaching Dakshina, he was alive. So, amrtaha. But then, only in certain times only their ashariratum will be manifest. For them, it is always manifest for Jivan Mukta because there is no identification at all with the body. Ashariratum is an every minute experience for them. For others, when they go to Samadhi, when they go to some kind of transcendental state, only we connect the ashariratum at that time. So that's why it gets prano, means he is alive. Brahmeva, that Brahmajnani is Brahman itself. Teja jnana swarupi eva, this idea behind. So, ashariratum always means Sharirabhimana Rahityam. And ashariratum is possible when a Jivan Mukta is living in this world, doing great things with physical body that we see. But for him, the physical body is like a skin that the snake has dropped lying on the ashes. That is why Tadyatha ahir nirloyani valmiki Vrta Pratyasta Shaita, all this explained here. This idea is further expounded in the next line. Sachakshu Achakshuriva, Sakarno Akarnaiva, Savak Avagiva, Samana Amanaiva, Saprano Pranaiva. You have to do Anvaya differently. That is what I said earlier. Never interpret in the light of your knowledge of Sanskrit language. It is absolutely inadequate, negative, and dangerous for your own understanding of philosophy. You read Apte, Moni Williams, or this is the meaning and Vedanta. No. That will be totally crazy. That's what people do, unfortunately, many modern scholars in the West, because they know language. So that's why it's very important here. So it should be, Anvaya is Achakshuru Sachakshuriva. Akarno Sakarnaiva. Avak Savagiva. Amana Samanaiva. Aprano Sapranaiva. So they are devoid of, so far as they are concerned, they are not seeing anything. Akshakshuhu. But then apparently it is as if they are seeing everything. So Sachakshutva means the perception that we will know about them. As I mentioned, Brahmavid, Vari and Varishta, all the Yoga Vasista, all these books, these are all our perception of a state we cannot perceive. So Achakshutvam is the real situation, the real condition, but Sachakshutvam is what we see, because the Brahmajnani, the Jivan Mukta, is not remaining inactive. He is seeing everything. And also he is hearing everything. Sakarnaiva. He is speaking, he is talking. That is Savakva. Actually, is Avak, is Achakshu, is Akarna. I mean, beyond any association or connection with activities like seeing, hearing, talking, like that is the idea behind. Panchendriyas and mind, their actions don't at all relate to them in that sense. Avak, Savakiva, Amana, Samanaiva, Aprano, Sapranaiva. That's why Anvaya should be done properly. What does it mean? Ityadhyaha. Of course, before that there is one. Idicha. Okay, before that, Pranayava. Iti, just Smriti. So, Idicha, we won't stop there. Smriti is a reference to Sthita Prajnasya Ka Bhasha Samadhistasya Kesava Siddhakim Prabharshitakim Asida Farajetakim. All this. So, the 18 verses from 55th verse to 72nd verse or second chapter. Sthita Prajnasya Lakshanani. So that is a reference. Smriti here means Mahabharata. So Gita is referred to here. The Prajnasya second chapter. 54th verse is the question. 55th verse onwards the answer. That is Prajagadiyada Kaman Sarvan Parthanan Atmanyevatmana Dusastra Prajnasya Prajnasya. Dukkeshu Anidiktamana Sukheshu Vigaraspha. So these 18 verses you find up to 72nd. Sthita Lakshanani. That is Smriti Pramanam, the other is Sudhi Pramanam, Brihadarnika. Ityadhyaha Sthita Lakshanani Achakshana Vidushaga Sarva Pravritya Sambandham Darsayati. So all these Lakshanas, all these descriptions expound, reveal Vidushaga Sarva Pravritti Asambandham. Means total absence of connection with body and also activities involving Panchajnanendriyas, Panchakarmendriyas and mind. That means that Vidusha, for Jivan Mukta, there is no connection. He may be working, he may be hyperactive. If you want to know this, Shankara himself, his action Sistanaveda sums up in the web of Indian life, and the greatest Western disciple. All that he did, and did all after Brahmajnana only, and from Govinda Bhagapada. or any incarnation of Sri Ramakrishna. Swamiji also started doing all this work after getting the Advaita and Abhudi, at least a taste of it from Guru Maharaj Dakshineshwar. That's the beginning of all his, his missionary work. So only after reaching this highest experience. So the Sarva Pravritti Asambandham, that's it. Swamiji says, sometimes he uses language like this, after he completely, in a way, disconnects himself with the organization, with everything. At some point, his action behaves like a Jivan Mukta, disconnecting himself from everything. So that's a different subject. Tasmat na avagada brahmatma bhavasya yatha purvam samsaritvam. Therefore, avagada brahmatma bhavasya means somebody who has already experienced, understood, realized aham brahmasmi, that bhava, that realization, aham brahmasmi bhava. Yatha purvam na samsaritvam. Asambandhatva means no connection at all with samsara. That is an important point to remember. Now you can imagine, what does it mean? Sharira sambandha for Atma is mithya, not Gauna. If you are Gauna, there will be no Jivan Mukti. If Gaunatvam is accepted, there will be only Krama Mukti. Krama Mukti means you will do Vasana, then Achidadi Marga, then Brahmaloka, then Kalpa, then Brahma, that particular Kalpa comes to an end, you also, that's all. Only Krama Mukti. So it's very important. If Gaunatvam is accepted, there will be no Jivan Mukti. Jivan Mukti is possible only because that the Sambandha is the Atma and Sharira, Sambandha is only Mithya, that's the idea behind here. So that Dehabhimana Rahitam is moksha, that's the idea behind. In other words, one can be very active and a Jivan Mukta and Asharira. One may be very lazy, doing nothing with his body, he is Asharira. He may not doing anything with his body. He has a body. He is doing everything with his body, he has no body. So Jivan Mukta may be doing lot of work. All the great Jivan Muktas did so much. And actually you find Jivan Muktas alone could do a lot more work and could be so efficient and still remain unattached. Because when you do that, Jivan Muktas don't waste energy, conservation of energy. They don't waste time also. For them, everything is in one dimension. The body remains or not, it is just one goal. So they are free from all entanglements. So, yasya tu yatha purvam samsaritvam na aso avagada brahmatma bhava idi anavadyam. So if somebody concludes that a person who is seen to have samsara, who is engaged in all samsara activities, entanglements, what does it mean? It means he has not understood Brahma Bhava means Aham Brahmasmi and Bodhi. He has not experienced. He has not understood Brahmatma Bhava. This is the way. It's clear. Now next. Yat punaruptam sravanat parachinayohu manna nididhyasanayohu darshana vidisheshatvam brahmanaha na swarupa parivasayitva vidhi. So here, the Bhashyakara is dismantling, refuting all the arguments put forward against him by Vrittigaras, Prabhagaras and Bhattas on different contexts. Here, he is referring to a view expressed by Vrittigara. Before that, he was answering the question about the Gaunatvam of Atma Sharira Sambandha. It is Gauna, not Mithya. That argument, because they wanted to retain some connection between Sharira and Atma. So this is answered. The next answer is Vrittigara. He referring to a question that was put to him by Vrittigara. Vrittigara asked a question. What's the question? Yet punaruktam sravanat parachinayoho manana nididhyasanayoho darshanat vidisheshuttam brahmanaha na swarupa paryavasayittamidi. So there were many Sruti Vakyas, for example. Sravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, that will create Amritatvam because it creates Apurva, and Apurva will create Amritatvam. Just like you take Vrihi, you prepare it and prepare other food grains, you prepare Purodasham. Like that, the Atma also should undergo this karma, upasana. So Atma can be purified Brahmajnanam. So Brahmajnanam is a purifying kind of a refinery for Atma. All these arguments were put forward by the opposite of Vrittigaras and others. That's why then Bhashyam replied, Atma is not samskaryam, and because Atma is not samskarya, that again was emphasized and re-emphasized many times. But here is a reference to some other statement by Vrittigara. He said, there are Sruti statements like, for example, the view, Manda view, Nidhyasya Viveka, etc. You should do Savanam, that you should meditate upon Brahman. Atma Brahmittiva Sida, Aditya Brahmittiva Sida, Jiva Brahmittiva Sida, Mana Brahmittiva. Like that, there are a number of mantras in the Srutis which indicate Kriya in the form of Dhyanam. And then Brahmajnanam is an Anga, is a Vidishesha. All these arguments were given. So their idea is this, that everything should be connected to some kind of upasana. So what referring to Deti in Veda, in the Vedic karmas, Deti is mentioned. After knowing about Deti, then the Deti should be used, it should be purified. So Deti itself becomes an anga of a vidhi, a kriya vidhi, of a kriya for which Deti becomes a havi, or it can become, havi means that being offered in the form of fire. So this is the argument. So the point is, and now against this, the Advaiti's reply is, if anywhere dhyanam or upasana ever mentioned, it is only before Brahmajnanam, not after Brahmajnanam. Dhyanam and upasana are perfectly okay. But that is only a help eventually that may lead to Brahmajnanam. After Brahmajnanam, there is no dhyanam or upasana. So, see, when you become Anga, Sesha, etc., what does it mean? It becomes junior, it becomes subservient, it is subsidiary, secondary detail of a bigger vidhi. That is Gavanatvam. That then becomes Samskarya. But here it says, all right, Upasana is okay, Sodavyaha, Mandavyaha, Nidhyasya, etc. Fine. But only up to Brahmajnanam, not after that. And that is a major argument here. Ippunuruktam Sravanat, Parachinayohu, Marana Nidhyasanayohu, Darshanat, Vidisheshatvam, Brahmanaha, Vidisheshatvam. How? Because the Sravana is becoming subservient to Marana and Nidhyasana. And this Darshana means it is mentioned in Srutis, Vedanta Vakyas, Sodavyaha, Mandavyaha, Nidhyasya, etc. So in that case, this it becomes, that is Brahmajnanam becomes Manana Nidhyasanayoho Angam, means it becomes Sesha. Manana Nidhyasanayoho Darshana Vidisheshat Brahmanaha Vidisheshattu. Brahma becomes Vidishesha. So Brahmanaha na Swarupa Paryavasayittu Vidhi. In other words, these Srutis do not expound Brahma, the Surupa of Brahman. Na Surupa Padyavasaitam. The ultimate goal of Suti is not to proclaim or to expound Brahmanaga Surupa. In fact, all Sutis, all Smrtis, all Vidhis will ultimately terminate in Brahmajnanam. That is how Chatusutra is going to conclude actually. When all Gauna and Mithya Sambandha will come to an end, then what happens? You will get the actual experience. That means, so I will explain this, it comes later, but you can understand it. Atma Anubhava in Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, could be either Gauna or Mithya. Gauna means you identify yourself with Bharya, Putra, Kalatra, etc. You identify yourself with them. You know they are different. As the father knows his son is different from a Simha, he may call him a Simha. Like that, a person may know that they are different from him, his Bharya, Putra, Kalatra, etc. Still, he is thinking that he identifies himself with them. So when they are Sukhi, he is Sukhi. When they are Dukhi, they are Dukhi. Already we discussed this at the time of Adhyasa Bhashyam. It's a different matter. We won't come back to that again. So this is one kind of Atmanubhava, it is Gauna level. The other one is Mithya. That is, a person said that is, he thinks they and he are the same. Actually they think so. That is Mithya. This can happen in extreme cases, but the greatest example is Sthanu Purusha. So Gauna or Mithya. There are two types of Atmanubhava. In contrast to these two, there is Mithyatma Bodha. Mukhyatma Bodha. Beyond Gauna and beyond Mithya. Beyond Gauna Atmanubhava and beyond Mithya Atmanubhava. Gauna means a person identifies himself with his relations, putras, etc. And then when they are happy, he is happy. When they are dukhi, they are dukhi. Like that. Another one, he identifies himself with other people. This is another kind of Atma, which is Mithya. Now, in contrast to this, Mukhya Atma Bodha. What is Mukhya Atma Bodha? When Gauna and Mithya both come to an end, that is Yathartha Mukhya Atma Bhava. That is why, Gauna Mithyatmano Asatve Putra Dehadi Bandhinath Sat Brahma Aham Sat Brahma Atmaham Sat Brahma Atmaham Ityevam Bodhe Karyam Katham Bhave. That is the first mantra, the conclusion. Gauna Mithyatmanaha Asatve Putra Dehadi Bandhinath. They are my people, or I am them. All this wrong understanding, Bhatanath, when they are totally removed, how Sad Brahmatma Aham Ityevam, Sad Brahmatma Aham. I am the Brahmatma Nibhudi. Ityevam Bodhe, when this Bodha comes, then Karyam Gatham Bhave, then there is no place for that. Like that, this is to be understood in this context. We'll come back to the earlier portion. So the point is, when a person realizes that all these things are Gauna or Mithya, then what happens is, eventually he will realize his true nature is Brahmatma Aham. So, according to Advaitins, Brahmanaha Sarupa Padyavasaitum, that is Advaitins' view. That means that is all Sutis come to an end with an exposition of Brahma Sarupa, Brahman. But these Puttigaras say It's an objection. Says, but Sodavyaha, Mandavyaha, Nidhyasavyaha. All these upasanas are dhyanam. Different dhyanam are recommended in Sudhis. Therefore, Sudhis do not end with, Sudhis do not conclude with the description of Brahman as the Atmaswarupa. This is the objection from Vrittikara. No, answer is this now. Sravanavat avagatyarthatvad manana nidhyasanayohu. Sravanavat avagatyarthatvad. So, all manana nidhyasana, like Sravanam, is meant for jnanam. That is, avagati means jnanam. Avagati arthatvad. It is meant to teach you, to take you the ultimate Brahmajnanam. All manana, all nidhyasana are meant to take you, like Sravana, to the highest Brahma avagati. It is meant to take you Brahma avagati. That is Sravanavat. Brahmanaha avagatyartatvad manana nidhyasanayohu. Manana nidhyasanayohu avagati arthatvad. Manana and nidhyasana are meant to take you, avagati means jnanam, Brahma jnanam, and Anubhuti is eventually meant to take you to Brahma jnanam. Yadihi avagatam Brahma anyatra vyujyeda bhavet tada vidisheshatvam. But suppose this Brahman is used in any other context, then it is okay, you can say it is vidisheshatvam. But here there is no vidisheshatvam, because all this manana, nidhyasana, sravana, all meant to take you up to Brahma avagati. Brahma avagati means, avagatam Brahma means siddham avagatam, anyatra vyujyeda bhavet. If it is elsewhere, then with vidisheshatvam. But here it is not. Natu tadasti manana nidhyasanayohu abhi sravanavat avagatyartatva. So manana nidhyasana, like Sravana, are meant to take you eventually to Brahma avagati. Avagati means jnanam, Brahma jnanam. That means after knowing Brahma jnanam, there is absolutely no need of any of this. What does it mean? Suppose the Sudhis tell you, after knowing Brahman, and then later on, this Sodavya, Mandavya, Nidhyasavya all mentioned, then it will become an Anga. The Sravana, Manana, Nidhyasana are mentioned as means that will take you to Brahmajnanam. They are not meant to be practiced after Brahma avagati. If it were recommended as different poses of upasanas to be practiced after Brahmajnanam, then maybe they could be treated, then we can say the Brahmajnanam can be as an Anga. It's clear to you? Manana Nidhyasana, if they were recommended after Brahmajnanam, then you can say Brahmajnanam is Sesha, Anga, and Manana Nidhyasana is Anki. As a result, Brahmajnanam becomes a subsidiary. But no, they are recommended as upasanas to be practiced up to until Brahmajnanam, not later. You know why this is important? Jnana karma samuchayavadi. Their main thesis is this. After Brahmajnanam only, after that also you should practice prasankhyanam. Prasankhyanam is the technical term used by Mandana in Brahma Siddhi and also Pattu Pravancha and others. In a different sense, of course, Bhamadi. Bhamadikara totally rejects all yajnas and yagas. Rituals are totally given up. But he recommends upasana to go along with Brahmajnanam. That is the major distinction between Bhamadi school or Prasankhyanavada and Jnana Karma Samuchayavada. Bhamadi is not wrong. It may be needed for those who have not the highest level of sadhana, sadhushta sampatti. Because prasankhya become irrelevant, unnecessary only in the context of Sabda Parokshawada. Sabda Paroksha is possible. That means when you listen to Tattwamasi Mahavakya, immediately it becomes an experience, Aham Brahmasmi experience. If that happens, then there is no need of prasankhya, because you have got Brahmajnana. It doesn't happen to everyone, especially those who are not highest developed Jnana Karma Sadhana Sampatti. Sabda Paroksha never happens. That means the experience when the Guru does Upadesha Tattwamasi Mahavakya, immediately the Shishya gets Aham Brahmasmi Anubhuti. That is Sabda Paroksha, Aparakshavada Vivarana Prasthana. That doesn't happen to anyone who has not reached the highest level of sadhana Chatushtaya Sampatti. If he has reached the sadhana Chatushtaya Sampatti, then Sarvana, Marana, Prasankhya not necessary. So, but in contrast to Mandana, Vrittigaras and other Jnana, Karma Samuchayavadins, Bhakti Prapancha, Brahmadatta and Mandana, mostly three, they insist that Prasankhyanam, Dhyanabhyasam should continue even after Brahmajnanam. So this is an important point. So that is the context in which you should understand all this. Next, again, Bhashyakara is referring to another important, of course, there is one point you have to remember. When we discuss this Jivan Mukta's Padhita Anuvritti, you have to keep in mind an earlier statement in the Adhyasa Bhashya, Paschadibhischa Abhisheshad, Ithaki Paschadeka Sabdadibhi Sodadinam Sambandhisati, etc. So the normal human activities, like for example, Sati Sabdadi Vijnane Patikule Jade Tatu Nivartande Anugule Cha Nipravartande Yada Dando Didugaram Purusham Abhimukham Ubalabhya Mam Hantum Ayamichadi Palayidum Aravante Harida Trishna Purna Panim Ubalabhya Tam Pratyabhimukhi Bhavanti Evam Purusha Abhi Vipanna Chittaha Kuraradistin Akrosadaha Khadgodidagan Belavatra Ubalabhya Tudo Nivartande Tabivaridan Prati Pravartande. So Paschadibhischa Abhisesha. So all Brahmajnanis, very often you find them acting and behaving like ordinary human beings. Like a normal person, he will run away. If he is sufficiently timid, he will run away from a stronger person who is armed person, run chasing him. Khadgyodadara, lifting a sword. And like a cow will run away if somebody faces the cow with a stick raised about to beat him. On the other hand, if you take a little green grass and show the cow, it will come after you. Like that, if somebody is very pleasant and friendly, you may go towards him. If he is strong and armed and hostile, he may run away from him. So these behavior patterns are common for normal human beings and also for the Brahmajnanis. Or it will be otherwise. There is no vidhi, nisheda, etc. for Brahmajnanis. Some Brahmajnani won't bother. There is a story of Sadashiva Brahmendra. He was walking through a place and somebody cut off his hands. He continued walking. And that person got frightened. The story goes. And then that person thought he may be a great spiritual man. He came back and asked for forgiveness, apologized to him. Immediately asked him to bring back the piece of the part of the hand that was cut off. He put together and it became okay. So these are the stories. Anyway, the stories do have a meaning and a context. So Brahmajnani Vidwan may work in any way he wants because he is in a state of asariratva. Sarira abhimana rahityam. So for him body is nothing. So this idea behind. Now next, Tasmat Pradipatti Vidhi Vishayataya Shastra Pramanagatum. This also is a reply response to a previous statement. So you should keep that in mind. That statement is that is Purvakshin is giving an objection here. Astra Abare Pratyavadisthande Yadyapi Shastra Pramanagam Brahma Tathapi Pradipatti Vidhi Vishayataya Eva Shastrayana Brahma Samarpyati, etc. So this is the Bhashyam at the beginning, I think so. So there is this view that is all these Brahmajnanam, all these should be interpreted as a part of Pradipatti Vidhi. Eva Shastrayana Brahma Samarpyati. Yatha yupa avahaniyadini alaukigani api vidhi vishayataya shastrena samarpyante. Tad, for example, yupa. Yupa is a post which the sacrificial animal may be bound. So ahavaniya, all these, all these alaukigani, all these things which normally we don't know much about except from Shastra, from Purvakanda. So they all considered to be vidishesha. Like that Brahma, the idea of Brahman, Brahmajnanam also can be considered to be like something like part of Pradipatti Vidhi. That is an argument much earlier, and that is being taken up and countered and dismantled. Tasmat na Pradipatti Vidhi Vishayataya Shastra Pramanagatum. Similarly, you argument that this Brahmajnanam and can be treated as part of Pradipatti Vidhi. Brahmana Sambhodityatah Swadantram eva Brahma Shastra Pramanagam Vedanta Vaki Samannayat Idi Siddham. This is Upasamkhara of this entire Sutra begins here. Tasmat na Pradipatti Vidhi Vishayataya Shastra Pramanagatum. So, well, all statements in Vedas should have pramanyam and sarthakatvam, should not be nirarthakam. So, Vedanta Vakyas, well, you can treat them as Pratipatti Vidhi, Upasana Vidhi. In that case, they also have got Shastra Pramanakatvam. Otherwise not. This is the old objection that came from Vattigaras and others. Prabhakara also raises in some context. No, this is that's why na tasman na pradipatti vidhi vishayataya shastra pramanagatum. So we can agree with your argument that Brahmanaka shastra pramanagatum only as part of pradipatti vidhi. Brahmana sambodhityada swadantram eva Brahma shastra pramanagam. So actually the swadantram means tattva avedagam means a Vedanta Vakyam which can make a statement about an absolute spiritual truth without being part of any other statement. Idataha sudantram, that is tattva vedagam, something that teaches you tattva. That is the real pramanyam of Vedanta Vakyas. So Vedanta Vakyas have Shastra Pramanagatum, not as part of Pratipatti Vidhi, but rather as Tattva Vedagatum or Tattva Bodhagatum. It proclaims the ultimate spiritual truth, how Vedanta Vakya Samannaya Idi Siddham. All Vedanta Vakyas do Samannaya, they merge, they harmonize. The harmony is found in Brahmajnanam as the ultimate Talparya, essence of all Vedanta Vakyas. We already discussed here, Talparya, that is on the basis of 6th chapter of Chandogya, Tattwamasi Mahavakya Vichara. We already discussed Upakrama Vasamkhara, Abhyasa Purvada Phalam, Arthavada Bhakti. All these we discussed earlier. We can go back to listen to it earlier again. Vedanta Vakya Samanaya Idi Siddham. Evam cha sati athadu brahmajijnasa idi visheha prathak shastrarambha upavadyati. Pradipatti vidhi parattehi athado dharma jignasa iteva arabdhatva na pratak shastram arabhyeda. I think we have time. I think we can conclude, okay? We can conclude. Now, there is a reference to another important context that is linked to Jaimini's Purvakanda. That should be understood. Those who are not familiar with the background of Purvakanda will not be able to understand the meaning of this. Even Sati, Adhado Brahma Jignasa Iti Tat Visheha. Pradashastra Arambha Bhavatidi. So that's why for this Tattva Avedagatvam Pramanam, Tattva Bodhagatvam as a Pramanam, for this purpose only Adhado Brahma Jignasa Iti Tat Visheha. Pratak Shastra means Swatantraya, means as independent, separate Shastram was started. Pradipatti vidhi varattehi adhado dharma jignasa iteva arabdhatvat na pradashastram arabhyeda. Suppose the Vedanta Vakyas and topic discussed in Vedanta Vakyas were actually part of Pradipatti vidhi. Pradipatti vidhi is explained in so many places in Jaimini. Pradipatti vidhi is always a kind of secondary vidhi. Preparations for yajnas and yagas, even disposal of the leftover after a big elaborate yajna, how it should be done properly, in what way they should be disposed of. All these may be included in different Pradipatti vidhis. Secondary, not like Utpatti vidhi. That's okay, no original Kriya vidhi. So, if the Vedanta Vakyas or the topic discussed Brahma Jnanam were part of Pradipatti vidhi, then Jaimini could have included this in Adhado Brahma Jignasa Purvakanda itself. Adhado Dharma Jignasa iti eva arabdhatvad. It's already there. Na Pratak Shastram arabhyeda. There was no need to start another. Badarayana Vyasa started Adhado Brahma Jignasa. Vyasa would not have found a need to start a separate and independent Shastram, the Brahma Sutra, that is Vedanta Sutras. Uttamimamsa. There would be no justification. Na Pratak Shastram arabhyeda. Arabhyamanam cha evam arabhyeda athataha parisishta dharma jignasa iti. And suppose, all right, even if we decide to start such a separate shastram, then should have begun like this. Athataha parisishta dharma jignasa. Parisham is an appendix, something to be added later. Because upasana were not discussed in Purvakanda properly. So Jaimini himself could have started a separate chapter like Adhataha Parishishta Dharma Jignasa iti. Then Ataha Kratvartha Purushartha Yoga Jignasa. It is a Jaimini Sutra. The Jaimini Sutra has got a special importance in this context. The point is, Jaimini, I think somewhere, he discusses Angangi Bhava of Yagas and Yajnas. Maybe 4th chapter, 3rd chapter, 4th chapter. So, after discussion of Angas and Angis, Anga of Yaga and Anga of Yagakarta. So, in the 3rd chapter, Jaimini discusses Angangi Bhava of Yagas. And then there's a discussion on Anga, whether it is Anga of Yaga or Anga of Yagakarta. So, in the 4th chapter, the sutra is Kratvartha Purushartha Yoga Jignasa. Kratu means Yaga. So, what is what is the status of different angas, whether it is an anga of yaga or anga of yagakarta. So, if Vedanta Vakyas and the theme of Vedanta Vakyas were part of Pratipatti Vidhi, Jaimini could have accommodated everything within his own Purva Mimamsa when he wanted to discuss whether this particular script, Vidhi is Anga or Anga of Yaga or Anga of Yaga Karta. But he didn't do that. He did not do any pratigya with regard to Vedanta Vakyas. That means he completely left it out for somebody else to do that. That is the meaning. Arvimanam cha evam arabhyeda athata parisishta dharma jignasa. Where Karma Kanda already discussed. Now we are going to discuss Upasana Kanda. For that purpose, he could have titled the whole thing a separate part. Ataha parisishta dharma jignasa. What is parisishta of dharma? Upasana. Dharma means karma, yajna, yaga, etc. Parisishta is what comes later. Something that is added to the main body of the book, is appendix. So these are all different thoughts to show that Jaimini completely left out Vedanta Vakyas. He was not disagreeing with Vedanta Vakya, but did not consider at all about starting a commentary or writing a book on the subjects. That's why Ataha Kraptvartha Purusharthayoga Jignasa. That is. Did not begin as a, he would have started as a Parisishta Dharma Jignasa. He didn't do that about Upasana. Especially because he already begins his 4th chapter. He says Ataha Kraptvartha Purusharthayoga Jignasa. This actually he began Kraptvartha Purusharthayoga Jignasa. So he could have started something like this. What is this? Ataha Parisishta Dharma Jignasa. To discuss Upasanas. If Vedanta Vakyas were all about Upasanas, they can accommodate it there, making it a Parisishta. Idivat Brahmatmaikya Vagati, Brahmajnanam, that's meaning, to Apratiknyata Idi Tattvatha. So he did not even do pratikya. Pratikya means you make a proclamation, this is what we are going to discuss. Jaimini didn't bother to do that. Idi tadarthaha yuktaha shastra arambha. Therefore it's perfectly okay to start a separate independent shastra, that is Adhado Brahmajnasa Idi. So this is important. If Brahman is not a topic, there is no need of starting any new shastra. So that's why it is a Swatantra, is independent, separate shastra. So now to the conclusion. Na tasmat aham brahmasmi iti edat avasana sarve veda sarve vithayaka sarvani chaidarani pramanani. So therefore everything ends with this aham brahmasmi, this anubhuti is the conclusion, is the end of everything. That's the idea behind aham brahmasmi anubhuti. Iti edat avasana eva sarve vithayaka sarvani chaidarani pramanani. Nahi aheya anupadeya advaitatma vagato nirvishayani apramatragani cha pramanani bhavitum. Nahi aheya anupadeya advaitatma vagato. At this stage when avagati here should mean experience and not Shastra Jnanam, but experience. And that is something you cannot give up. It is your own true nature. And it is not something to be attained because it is your own true nature. You don't attain your own true nature, which is already with you all the time, is inherent to you. And of course, you cannot get it from any other source. Therefore, All vidhis, all Vedanta Vakyas, they end with this Aham Brahmasmi iti Davasana. Nahi Aheya Anivadeya Advaita Megadu Nirvishayani Apramatragani cha Pramanani Bhavidum Marhandi. Therefore, when you experience Aham Brahmasmi, you realize that all vidhis and pramanas are relevant and meant to take you to that experience. So this Advaita Anubhuti, it is not something you can give up. It is not something that you have to attain. It is Aheya Anuvadeya. It is not to be obtained because yours already with you. And it's not something to be given up. It is already with you. It's already yours. Therefore, after that, after reaching that experience, Atma, Advaita Atma Avagato, what happens? Apramadragani Pramanani. I mean, all Pramanas become Apramadragani, means all Pramanas, Prameya, Pramata, all Tribudis will cease to exist. This is a conclusion. Apicha, who is a Purvacharya's, is a quotation from a pre-Shankarite Vedantins. Maybe not Advaitins, but there are different views regarding this. One view is that you say by a not so well known but somewhat obscure pre-Shankarite Advaitin called Sundara Pandya. This is an idea behind. That means Pramana, Prameya, Pramata. Only up to Brahma experience. It may help you for Shastra Vichara, Brahma Vichara, but only up to that. Then all tributaries go away. Gavana Mithyatmano Asatve Putra Dehadivadhanath Sat Brahmatma Ahamityevam Bodhe Gairim Katham Bhaved Anishtavyatma Vijnana Prank Pramatruttam Atmanaha Anishtasya Pramataiva Papmadosha Adivajitaha Dehatma Pratyo Yedut Pramanattvena Kalpitaha Daukikam Tadadevedam Pramanam Tva Atmanischayat. So, this Putra, Deha, all these, that's all Kalpita. It's not real. It is mostly due to Gunaroha. Or Mithya, either Gauna or Mithya. By Gauna, a person will have this feeling that when some of his relations, Bharya, Putra, when they suffer, he also identified the suffering. Their dukkha becomes his dukkha. It is Gauna. Why Gauna? Because he knows actually. Just like father calling his own son as Simha, knows his son is not Simha. There is an inherent understanding that their suffering is not my suffering. That's why people, there are different levels of this Gaunatvam. Suppose you hear there is a big earthquake happening in some distant countries and another continent thousands of miles away. You don't cry and weep, but you feel sad about it. It's one kind of Gaunatvam. You may feel sad because some terrible things happen in some countries, natural calamities, tsunami, etc. That is some kind of paradoxal Gauna. But then, suppose your own near dear ones, then it becomes closer. That is also Gauna. Because it doesn't affect your physical body assets. You see Gunaropa. Because their Guna means characteristics, you are superimposing on yourself. They are going through dukkha, that dukkha you superimpose upon yourself. So Gunaropa. The other one is Mithya, which is absolutely unreal. Identifying oneself with another person. They are interrelated, but there are some minor differences. Now, at the highest level, this Atmanubhava in the form of Gauna Amitya go away when you get Mukhyatma Bodha, means when you completely free yourself from Sharira Abhimana. Then Gauna and Mithya both disappear. That is the Yathartha Atma Abhimana, Atma Bodha. Sat Brahmatma Aham. That is Mukhya Atma Bodha. Sat Brahmatma Aham. Ityeva Bodhe. When this comes, Karyam Katham Bhavid. Then, Pramana, Prameya, all these, they are totally irrelevant. That's the idea. Again, Anveshtavya Atma Vijnanat. We are trying to find out something. At that time, Atma has got Pramatrutam. That way, Anveshtavya Atma Vijnanat Prank Atmanaha Pramatrutam. Anveshtasyat. Once you realize it, Pramataiva Papadosadivajideha. That Anishta, when you actually realize what you are, when you experience what you are seeking, then that realization will teach you that this Prameya and you, the Pramada, are non-different. So, once a Pramada realizes what he is looking for, this Anveshtavyam, once he realizes that, then they lose the status of Prameyatva, Pramadrutva and also Pramanatva. Why? Because once you realize you are the one you are looking for and you are the one who is actually the real knowledge itself, then Prameya, Pramatra, Pramata and Pramana, all the three Buddhis, Jnaya, Jnanam, Jnaya, Jnata, Dhyanam, Dheya and Dhyata. All these three Buddhis will disappear. This way, Annishtavya Atma Vijnanat Prag Pramatruttam Atmanaha Annishtasyat Pramata Eva Patmadosha Divajitaha. Patmadosha means actually neither Pramada nor Pramana nor Prameya. Dehatma Pratyo Yadvat Pramanatvena Gadvidaha Lagikam Tadadevedam Pramanam Tva Atmanischayat. So Dehatma Pratyaya, that is this Dehaman, I am this body. That is, this is how actually without Adhyasa, without Ajnanam, no one can act as a Pramata. And when you don't act as a Pramada, there is no Prameya or Pramana. That's an important thing to remember. So really speaking, we already mentioned earlier, whole life is in Adhyasa only. Shastram, Shishya and Shasan, all these, everything is in Adhyasa only, already mentioned earlier. So when Pramatrutam and Pramanuttam and Prameyattam, they completely disappear, then Adhyasa is gone. That's why I mentioned earlier, Sat Brahmatma Ahamityevam Bodhi. So that is the idea that's meant by Mukhyatma Bodha, when Gauna and Mithya both disappear. Dehatma Pratyo Yadvat Pramanutena Kalpidaha. So Pramanuttam is only Kalpita. Because we think we are this body. Unless we identify the body, you cannot be, I want to study book, I want to go. The thought cannot come. And that is actually the nature of all pramanas, all activities. But when we realize the true nature of pramada as Atman, that is Patma Doshadi Varjita, that is the real nature, then what happens is all this will disappear. So this Pramadrutvam for a Jiva is possible only when he identifies, as long as he identifies himself with Sarira. Otherwise, it's not possible. Even those who believe that this Prapancha is real, is Satya, will admit that Dehadeya is not Atma. But that is so samsara continues, as idea of kind. Laukikam tadvat eva idam pramanam tva atmasya. Till you realize Atmajnanam. So all laukika activities, all that happens in the world, which involves Pramatrutvam in our context, all based on this Dehatma Pratyeha, Dehatma Bodha. I am this body. Without that, Indriya also do not function. Without Indriya's functioning, there will be no Shastra Charcha also. And all the entire life in the world is a function of Adhyasa, already mentioned earlier. That is repeated here. So when we realize this truth, then only we get free from Adhyasa. That's a conclusion. Well, I don't think there is a little more, maybe a few minutes. I think we'll conclude now. It's okay. I don't think it's anything there. So this is an important, that is the Pramadrittama Pramada is Kalpida. The Pramanyam of Pramana is Kalpida. Prameyatvam of Prameya is Kalpida. All Adhyasa only. That's the idea behind. So I think I've already discussed everything here. There was no need of... one thing that we may find it difficult to understand is this Jaimini's important thing. That is, Jaimini already discusses yajnas and yagas. The Vedanta Vakyas were part of Upasana. Jaimini could have included that part in his own Puramimamsa. He doesn't do that. He doesn't begin a new chapter exclusively to deal with Upasanas mentioned in the Vedanta Vakyas. He doesn't do that. So all these are arguments meant to show that there is full justification for Vyasa to begin an independent and separate Shastram to discuss Vedanta Vakyas based on this Tattva Samannaya, meant to harmonize all Vedanta Vakyas to show that they all integrate, they converge in the idea of Jiva Brahma Anubhuti. That's idea. Okay? Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.